My name is Tom Haley. I'm a photojournalist. I wanted to be a photographer. I was more interested in the art aspect of photography as opposed to the journalistic kind of photography. But in fact, I think it was documentary photography that was my main interest, to travel around the world, meet people, meet different people. Somehow this is a way that one gets to know oneself. Of course, everybody was watching what was happening in Yugoslavia. It was not with great joy that I came here, because I was already had over 10 years of working in the business, and I had 2 small children, and this war was very dangerous for journalists also. My first trip was in May of 1992. My main interest was Sarajevo, and it was a city that was besieged, and it was how civilians were coping with the war. I was really interested to see how people were able to live under siege for such a long period. So I kept coming back. As I said, I had a family, and I would come and go. I often came not because there was a lot happening, but I thought it was important to show my friends here and Sarajevans that the West did care. I remember after the first winter in Sarajevo, where people had really suffered, and Sarajevans were mad. They were mad with the West. They were mad with journalists. What's going on? How can you let us live in this besieged city for so long? Why is nothing happening? And we had the same questions, but we were able to leave, and this kind of brings to mind the comment of Don McCullen. Not wanting to be remembered as a war photographer. I think I really don't like this appellation, war photography. I don't think photographers are the guilty ones of this. It's the people who are trying to categorize them, and say, oh, this guy is a war photographer. To me, this is a very réducteur. It diminishes what we really do as photographers. Covering a war is not that difficult, and it makes incredible pictures. It's dangerous, but it's also a lot of fun. And it's quite easy to make strong images. As a journalist, I'm not trying to determine who was right, who was wrong. I'm trying to understand what's going on, And the only way you can do that is to be with the people. And of course, in the case of Sarajevo, where clearly you had a city and civilians under siege by a surrounding force, there's no question who's right and who's wrong, So I don't feel like I have to come over to the Serbian side to, hey, what are you guys doing? What's sniping people down in the streets and throwing mortars and stuff like that? That's pretty clear. And I think that's where, and at the time, CNN was here. Christiane Amanpour was a young reporter, and she was very much criticized in the West about becoming kind of an advocate of, we got to do something about this city. And this idea of advocacy journalism, which in the West at the time was not really something that was considered professionally correct. You tell the story, just, objective and this kind of thing. I have a lot of difficulty with the idea of images that we see and then nothing happens, no action I mean, because that's supposed to be why we're doing this, right? I mean, that's supposed to be why we want to intervene in people's lives, because we want to show the tragedy, we want to show the hardship, we want to show these things that are happening, hopefully so that something is going to change. And, you know, I think of the picture of Ilan, the little Syrian boy on the Mediterranean Sea. Did that have much impact? I mean, has that changed anything in terms of how we are dealing with the war in Syria? I mean, there are just any number of examples like that. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe this, you know, I'm expecting too much. I don't know, you know, but I'm glad I had the opportunity of doing what I did then, as opposed to somebody starting out today. It's for me, it's very depressing. This picture I took in September of '92 of this woman trying to take cover from a mortar shell, Marshallitita Street, which was just sort of daily things that happened in Sarajevo during that time. Cars on fire and, you know, people running for fear of sniper fire. This civilian resilience to this aggression, you know, that I find most interesting. I'm interested in the human experience and my relationship to that, because I think everything I do is a trip, a journey in this world until the day comes when we're no longer here. You know, an attempt to understand what we're doing here, why we're here, this kind of a thing.